Namaskar. Is this the end of the great Chinese economy? What is happening in the last few days? Is there a run on their banking system? Why are people being browbeaten and pushed away from withdrawing their own savings? A lot of things happening in China, which you will not see in any mainstream media. But to cut the clutter and see through the whole thing and make sense, we have our specialist, Sasha Gong. Sasha, namaskar and welcome to PGurus channel.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Hi, everybody.
And Sasha and viewers, we have put together a PPT. Sasha always likes to work with a PowerPoint, and it gives you a very stunning details of what is playing out in China as we speak. So Sasha, with your permission, whenever you want me to, I can start the PPT going.
Let's begin with a piece of breaking news before the PPT.
Yes.
And because this is about not only about China, but also about America. The interesting part here is the number one person, the guilty person, actually, according to the Chinese media, who already declared him guilty, whose last name is Lü, L-U, first name is E-Y-I, Lü Yi, the Chinese way. The guy has fled to, some say Canada, but most reports said the United States of America. And this guy, if you trace back what he did and where his money came from, we trace back to a company called 𝙒𝙖𝙩𝙦. And if anyone remembers our earlier presentation.
I do. 𝙒𝙗, Hunter Biden.
Yes, that's also the company backing Hunter Biden. Yes, and Hunter Biden got like $20 million from that company. So the guy is now in the United States. And of course, China will demand extradition and see what the Biden government would do. And this is a piece of breaking news that, I dig it up. Nobody has seen it. The Chinese reported the 𝙒𝙗 and his backing. The American media reported all the protest. But put two and two together, that's important. So when I saw the names or the company involved, it's several hundreds of company involved. And the major companies have, several dozens. And when you put them who's behind whom and all this picture, and you see, well, the title of this presentation is the looming crisis in China, but also I'm interested in the looming relationship between the Biden administration and an incident happened far remote in China.
So let me ask you a question before we go to the main presentation. Lü Yi, when do you think he fled China for the United States?
Just a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, quite recent. And he's Chinese, but he holds not Malta, Cyprus. He holds a Cyprus passport.
Oh, I see. Wow. Amazing disclosure. So viewers, we have stumbled upon something, or rather Sasha has stumbled upon something that the mainstream media in the United States, perhaps the whole world, hasn't yet picked up upon. And we're going to try and make sure that this reaches every corner of the world. So what is going to happen to this guy? I'm assuming that he is in the hands of some intelligence agency, whether it is the CIA or the DNI, who knows? And we don't know. We don't know that. But interestingly, see, the thing here is it going to be a tool that US is going to use as an offense against China? Or is it going to use this as a defense to cover up something that the book Red Handed has written, where $31 million of payback to the Biden family has been identified by the author? We've done an episode on this. 20 million came, I believe, from 𝙒𝙗𝙩, right?
Exactly.
Right.
That's the same company. So, the media so far only reported that, well, people protest in China, they could not get their money and this or that. But this connection and see if they pick up. I already emailed to several of my friends in the media, including like I contact them, Wall Street Journal, Washington Post, and let's see what they would do.
Wonderful. Let's flow ahead. Whenever you're ready, we can put the PowerPoint presentation and start.
Yeah, let's put the title page first.
Yes, here we go.
And this is about the looming crisis, because the crisis looked like very local, looked like not sort of not that many people participated, but it's a great symbol of what's happening in China, and especially what's happening in the Chinese economy, which, well, for years is the so-called engine of the world economy. When that happens in China, and guess what would happen to the world? So this is the title page, The Looming Crisis in China. So let's go to the first one. Before we get deep into the subject, you have to know what's actually happening. And although this incident has attracted the world media, and from so far what I saw is that everybody report a very small slice of the whole thing. So I better do what the journalists do, and is that to state the who, when, where, what, why, to give you some background of the information. Who protested? The protesters, the thousands of protesters, are people who who saved in some local banks. So far, 4 local banks, they saved their money there, and they try to take the money out, some of them, to begin with, in April. Some of this, not investors, some of the savers, contact the bank, wants to get their money out. And before they went there, some went there to the bank, said, well, no, your fund has been frozen. So people put this on their social media, say, hey, what's going on? Our funds have been frozen. And now suddenly people got panic. People say, hey, we have money there. The fund got frozen. And what happens is that people start to, talk and gather together, wants to go to the bank. Before they go to the bank, many people, all these people who have money there, suddenly, account holders, suddenly found out that, what they call the health code had turned red. What does it mean? In China, everybody has to have a code that it's a QR code. That code says, are you healthy, or are you do you have COVID? That sort of thing. You have to test it. And then if your code is green, you're allowed to go to the bus and walk on the street and go to the market and do things. If your code is red, you'd better stay home. Don't go. The first one is green, and then go yellow. If you go yellow, there's a warning. Just don't go out. But if it's red, it's a very dangerous signal. The possibility of someone come to your place and take you to a hospital, or this special hospital, is quite high, let's say. So when your health code turn red, you have no freedom. You are the minimum there. You are jailed at home. So when this account holder said, well, let's go to take our money out, suddenly everyone's health code turned red. So, well, even they are not allowed to go out. They can talk on internet. So people start talking, say, what happened? My health code went red. And the other one said, mine too. So, and very soon it became an incident, and became, everybody was talking about it. This is in April and early May. And who say, hey, our money is taken. We can't take our money when we plan to take our money out. we have a health problem suddenly. Even people who just took their test, that I took a test in the last minute and now my code is red, what happened? And that became a big, draw lots of attention. So since they could not take their money out, and starting in June, all these people talk to each other, they gather together, say we need to go demonstrate. And first hundreds and later thousands of people went to the bank and to also the Chinese security office, bank security, what they call the monitoring system. That's an office, and they would go there to demonstrate that we want our money, we demand our money. And the funny thing is that all these people, they try to be legal, they try to show their loyalty to the Chinese government, and they try to show they're not troublemakers. So they yelled, 𝗒𝘂𝘀𝘆, who's the premier, 𝗒𝘂𝘀𝘆, investigate, 𝗒𝘂𝘀𝘆, we want our money back. But they posted Chairman Mao's portrait and Xi Jinping's portrait there, so we are still loyal to the party. So hundreds and then thousands gather. When they gather, and what happened is that, the police came out. The police came out and they tried to drive people away. Whatever that happened, and I will go into some details later. But that's what happened in Henan. And Henan, people who are not familiar with the Chinese geography, Beijing, the capital city Beijing, located in the middle of Hebei province. Hebei province means the north of the river, and then south of the river is Henan. Henan means south of the river. So Henan is not that far away from Beijing. So a large scale demonstration happened here, and later the police there was some violence happened. Anyway, why? The money, they could not get that money out. So I think so far, am I making the whole incident clear?
Yes, you are.
All right. And so let's go to the next. The code red. Let's stay in the first slide. The question here is why? What happened? Why these people? What happened to the money? So people want the bank to answer them, wants the government to answer them. The answer they got is that, your money is not in your saving account. Your money is not in your account. Maybe your money went to an investment account. That's a huge difference. If you put in a saving account, it's in a saving account. The money would not diminish or reduce. But if you put in investment account, that means if your investment lost money, you lost money. So people say we never put our money in investment account. We always put in saving account. What happened? What happened to my saving account? Here it's something weird happened. And very soon people figure out one thing. The only disappearing account is the money, disappearing money. The money when they bank online. You see, we got so used to banking online, and in China, everybody, especially during the pandemic, all the banks are closed. You bank online, right? You save your money online, you take your money, you transfer money online. Okay, now what happens that the government, of course, investigated. And this is a very simple scheme, very easy to understand. What happened is when people bank online, their money through the app disappear or went to investment account instead of saving account. But if you use that app, you would see you're still doing the saving account, all your money's there. But that app is not really connected to the banks. That's a very weird thing. When you use APP, it should be the same as your bank statement and everything. So all the bank statements online, everything look very normal. But if you go to the bank counter, you ask them to print out your account information, it's totally different. So what happened is that this is what happened. I'm not sure it happened in other countries or it's only a some Chinese thing. All right. And so here is the so-called, these are small banks. These are called village or township banks. They are not big banks. They are backed by some big banks, but they are not. And since 2007, the Chinese, Chinese governments used to own all the entire banking system. All banks are state-owned. But the state-owned bank has one problem. If you have a state bank, and it would be very not nimble, let's put it this way. And when private enterprises wants a loan, wants money, and the state bank may drag their feet and deny them. The state bank mostly work for the state enterprise. So the state enterprises doesn't matter how badly they run. The bank still backs them. If you're good, private enterprise, unless you have high-ranking government officials backing you up and that, it's very, very hard for people to get a loan. So all this, but the problem is that state banking problem creates an economic problem. China mostly rely on private sector to develop its fast sectors like export and all that. And when that happened, the Chinese government say, okay, we don't want our state bank to risk that much. Let's do we sort of relax the banking system a little, and let's the local people, the township, the village, also have their own banking system. They will be responsible to get the money and fund enterprises locally. The problem is that, when you build all the system, local system, the banking, if I am I want to open a saving account, why would I put in my saving in all this small bank and not much guarantee? How about if you go bankrupt? China actually has the insurance system which say if a bank goes bankruptcy, people can get like maximum $500,000 yuan, which is about 70,000 US dollars, something like that. That's the most you can get. If you have millions of yuan, sorry, we are not responsible. So what happens that all this small banking institute, they promise people high return, very high return in order to attract the savers. How much? Say if you put your money in a state bank, in a good year, they have 2% interest. And all this small banking system, they say, okay, you get 4, 5. The maximum I saw in some documents, the maximum say you get 10%. Think of it. If you have 10%, you put on the saving and money grow 10%, people would put their money there. And a lot of people, since all these small banks are local, and what they do is that they hire local people to promote their business. When they hire local people, this is also what happened. The local people get people of their family, their lineage, their village. They would get those people. Those neighbors trust each other, so they get those. And all those people, the bank workers, they have a basic salary, and the rest of their money depends on how much business they can get. So everyone make high promise and get their relatives, get their family and their friends to invest in these banks. That's how these banks grow. That's what happened. And I actually want to add a little bit background information here. There's all the small banks, when they have the small banks there, the small banks are also, well, in a way, rely on local government. They rely on protection from the police. They rely on local officials to back them up. And so the local government organizations demands some return. So what happened is that this is a very rich, very fertile ground of mafia. What we saw in Henan is we actually saw the mafia and the mafia-backed government working together to take millions of dollars from people. How many millions? According to what I saw in the documents, it's about 400 million, 40 billion yuan, which
Wow.
is about 40 billion, more than 6 billion US
Billion
dollars.
dollars. Yeah, right.
Billions. And how many people put money there? It's 410,000 people, savers who put their money there. And so what happens is now at this point, it's still sort of it's still in early investment stage, in the early investigation stage. It looked like the mafia had set up all these small banking organizations. The mafia also bought the local government, and the mafia established their own high-tech companies, which wrote all the banking apps. So app put the money. Do you have any questions to?
The one question I have is the fact that government was involved. They would have known that the group that is doing all this banking, putting together these banks, are indeed mafia. So wasn't there any regulatory mechanism to make sure that the person who starts a new bank, even if it's a small bank, that they are of good standing in the society?
Yeah, here is how the Chinese system works. The head of the mafia doesn't own anything. Well, if you want someone with good standing, like a government official, you buy someone with a good standing. Apparently, that's what happened. You can set up a bank if you have the entire leadership of a town. The town government back it up would not be a problem. And they can get other people to back it up. They simply buy them out. So this is what we are actually witnessing, how from this case, how the Chinese local government, what we call the mafialized, perhaps. I don't know if I have invented that English word. Anyway, let's go to the next slide. Okay, the next slide is government reaction. What's the government reaction? What we saw is that, the government in the very beginning tried to suppress it. The code red is one way, and also they threatened the demonstrators that, well, you guys, you are disturbing the peace and you'll be sentenced to jail, this or that. And they sent out 3 teams to suppress the protesters. The first team is actually the police. If you look at it, you don't see the police doing a lot. The police was sitting there to show force. And they beat up people a little bit. But people who, well, participate most, the Chinese call that in white coats and a black shirt. Who are the white coats? Actually, white shirt, white and the black. The white, we talk about it like when we talk about the one-child policy. The white are the people who carry out either one-child policy or other whatever to maintain disability. The neighborhood committee, and during the pandemic, well, they all put on white shirt, and the white shirt is the symbol of power. When you look at Shanghai, you also see a bunch of white coat. In Shanghai, they actually put in a coat and look like some something from the outer space, that sort of thing. The black shirt, the mafia actually that time, there are people, the mafia, their thugs wear black. So in that case, they would not be mistaken as the demonstrators. And you see a lot of white shirt and a black shirt. And with the police watching, they came to beat people up. And dozens of people were injured. And well, I don't know if there are other casualties, because now no newsman can get even close to the demonstration. And that's what government did. And another thing government did was, well, a few days ago, since the demonstrators, this is about their money, they would not back off. So lots of people remain demonstrating, and even the fellow demonstrators were beat up. What happened is that the Henan local, the provincial level of government, of the security monitoring system, whatever, the China's type of SEC agency, they sent out an announcement. And in that announcement, they said they would lend money to these local banks to pay people whose savings is under 50,000 yuan, which is about $7,000 US.
$7,000, right,
yeah.
right.
You pay people under. People who have more money there, sorry, we are not dealing with you first. So the reason to do that is the majority of people have less than 50,000 yuan. These are not rich people. There are a few people who had a lot of money, millions of dollars there, but the majority people have less money than that. So they want to deal with the majority, and they said, okay, we are going to lend the money and let them pay you. In a condition, you're not going to demonstrate there, not going to disturb peace. That's the word I use. You are not going to disturb peace again. Go home. And the two other very weird conditions. It's kind of interesting. Is that, well, the conditions that if your money is not in your account, we reserve the right to take it back. What does it mean? It means if your money put in a non-saving account, they would take the money back. That's very interesting, because most of these people's money were put in different account, investment account instead of saving account. That's the beginning of the problem. That's where the problem is. So here it's most people, even they got their money, they may end up owning the government money, because that's the condition. And the government also said, well, we're going to punish those who, well, put their money there to get illegal high return. What means illegal high return? The illegal high return, do you mean like, well, 10% a year is an illegal high return? There's no clear definition. So, in other words, the government put money there, the government pay money to calm people down. The majority of people calm them down. On the other hand, they also put a threat there. Say, well, better look at your account. And what type of account? Well, we reserve the right to take the money back. And, well, another unspoken word is, it's probably, well, if you're involved in illegal trade, they can come and get you. So that's what the government, how the government deal with. The government deal with violence, and the government deal with them with, well, some payback, but with all sorts of conditions, which will, I believe, if that's carried out, make, well, most people's money will go away eventually, like that. So that's the government reaction.
Sasha, before we go to the next slide, I have one question. So essentially, the government is washing their hands off of investors' money, sort of hinting that they did not do their homework before choosing to put the money in this particular bank because it was offering such high returns. And the fact that they said they are a bank and that they are regulated by somebody, because these banks also had insurance, right? They were covered by the Chinese federal insurance, weren't they? You said something to the effect of $70,000 or something like that.
Yes, it's the insurance, but the insurance doesn't cover what they call illegal activities.
Oh, okay.
If it's saving, they cover. If condition of that illegal pay, a condition of that insurance money is, first, the bank has to declare bankruptcy. If the bank doesn't declare bankruptcy, well, you may not even be able to get the money. And then when the bank, if the bank declare bankruptcy, and if you're engaged in illegal activities, whatever, the government defined, you may also get the money. You may not get the money back. They can deny you. So when we look at it, I say, why? What does it mean? What does that high return, why would people do that? That's a very interesting thing. It's actually relate to a much, much larger subject. That is the essence of Chinese growth, was the Chinese economy. And if you look at Chinese has China has a dual system. Part of China is state-owned, and the other part is private, the private economy. The private economy is the engine of China's growth. And state enterprises, we all know they are not very, well, to say they are not efficient is an understatement. Anyway, the private sector makes money. But when you have a very fast growing economy, what people need is capital. They need money. They need lots of money in order to grow. And how to get the money? The Chinese government would actually not paying that. But the Chinese people, you know, the Chinese people have a very solid tradition of savings. They would put their money aside and save their money. And well, in the 80s, I don't know what's the saving rate. In the 80s, the Chinese people actually save like 40% of their income, which is, you know, if you tell the people in America, they would say they are crazy. But the Chinese people that put that much savings first is because, you know, they worry about the next generation. And it's also, it's quite a Chinese tradition. So the Chinese put a lot of savings aside. And how to absorb the savings, what to do with this, was actually to the Chinese, it's a good problem. And with all this local banking institute, the people put their money in, they fund the Chinese, the private enterprises. Here's one problem. When you have, how do banks make money? They make money from making loans, right? And how high is the loan? So here is what we see a Ponzi scheme, ongoing Ponzi scheme is first, who can set up the finance institute? Not that any people who had background, who have government connections, who have orders. So they set up this and they need to loan money out. And if you're a private businessman, local, say if you produce socks in a local enterprise and you export a lot to America, what do you need? Of course you need money. And then you need connections. You need connections and, well, whatever you need, supply, connection, and if local government makes trouble for you, you're done. So if the bank has local government, people also use that as a vehicle to set up their network, their connections. And it's everything is put all together as one connection. And how high is the interest rate? It's a norm, 30%, or even higher. But you see the thinking of the entrepreneurs, especially in the past few decades, 3 decades, China has this economic boom. When you have that, if you are a developer, for example, this is the word the way they calculate. If they develop, say, a building, and normally they make 50% of profit from that. They'll put like $10 million, you make $5 million. But you need at least need the $5 million to invest into labor, materials, and things. And you have to get that $5 million from a bank. And if the bank charge you 30%, well, you still have 20% profit. Plus, you have all kinds of local government who are government officials who are connected to the bank to help you out. So look at this is exactly the picture how China works. It's a whole Ponzi scheme there. Until one day, say we take real estate as an example. One day, people say, okay, apartment building compounds, we have one. Well, our family, say if you have a one-child family, and eventually, well, I have so many friends, children would say one child would have grandma's apartment, one grandma, the second grandma, and the parents. So this child suddenly has 3 apartments. And sometimes even more when people invest. So why would they buy? They don't need to. So the housing suddenly, when you see the change here, the housing market suddenly slow down. And so what happened to the developers? If they can't sell, well, they can't sell the house they built, they can't pay the bank loan. They pay, well, the bank loan, if there's 30% high interest rate, and next year, that's 30% on top of another 30%. On top of that, you see, so when you see in recent years, the Chinese, all this, we saw the bankruptcy of the biggest Chinese real estate developer. And if you look at it doesn't make sense. It started operating in 1996. And all the way, the whole enterprise was based on borrowing money and developing the thing. And one day, they failed to develop, and all the debts add up. And suddenly they realized since 1996, that company has a debt close to, like, I'm just trying to, it's in Chinese yuan. Chinese yuan, it's 2 trillion yuan, or something very ridiculous number. And you calculate all the days they operate. You suddenly realize every day they operate, they exist, they lost millions every day, and the entire company collapsed. And that's actually a big picture. Now we are seeing the other end, when companies collapse, when the loans, all these high interest loans collapse. And this is what happened.
So if I understand you correctly, Sasha, what China is about to face or already facing is a compounding debt problem where, you had usurious interest rates, 50%, 30%. These are all, unheard of. That is far too high a burden, remembering that their end customer is half the way across the world. So you have to give like unbelievable terms, like 90 days, 9 months. I've heard 9 months, meaning if Walmart gets your product and stocks on their shelf, they have up to 9 months to pay back the money on which you have built this product. So you have to sustain yourself for 9 months before you get paid for what you shipped 9 months ago, probably 10 months ago, because it takes a month for things to arrive from China to the United States. So this is unsustainable, in my opinion. So please continue.
Very unsustainable. And you see that this is one of the beginning of the collapse of the whole Ponzi scheme. Actually, Chinese economy is also quite a Ponzi scheme in a way. And then on top of all that, the important part of this is not on who run the Ponzi schemes, in what way, and what benefit all those people. And let's go to the next slide. It's the fun part. This is the guy. Actually, his last name is Lu, Y-U, first name is Yi, Lu Yi in Chinese. The picture is that actually he appeared with, I think, Bill Clinton or all sorts of people in an advertisement. I think they advertised that in Times Square once, that congratulations for China's Olympic or whatever it is. And they have all kind of figures. That's why he has the UN sign in his back, that he appears in nobody knew at that time who the hell was that guy. And it's an interesting story. Typical Chinese story, and not only very interesting, but very telling. The guy did not have much education. And he came from a village in Henan. So starting in the 1990s, in that time, and he got himself involved well, he's about 50 or something, but in his late 20s, he started to do business. And he got himself, connected to the local officials and local governments and local whatever, all this very local. We are talking about village and the township and later county level, very local. And somehow he established, now we found a few cases. Actually, he found guilty in other cases, in the 90s even. So he started to put his scheme on and talk people into investing and doing. He set up at least 100 companies. And each company, they need a very complicated financial network. And after 2011, after all this, the Chinese government granted license to all these local banks, and his company and himself started to put all this companies and the banks all together. So some of his companies are taking money from the bank. Some of these companies are receiving something. So at this point, I have been reading a lot on this. It's very hard. I guess the government would have the same problem to figure out who is who borrowed from whom, or who lent to this and to that. It's very complicated. But here's the trick. This guy doesn't own a thing, according to papers. He set up this mafia type of group, and his family members and his same village, same lineage, and all these people, well, owns different companies. Very complicated web, as I said. And he focused himself on setting up relationship, which means bribing high-ranking officials, going to upper banks and going to different places. And this guy got himself a Cyprus passport. Cyprus is one of those countries who sell passport. Basically, if you put certain amount of money, they give you a passport. And he never actually lived there. He would go. He lived in China. He claimed he represents different countries, Libya and Cyprus, whatever. He just claimed he represents this. But a foreign passport gave him protection. And he also, I'm not very sure because I can't confirm that. And he also gets permanent residence in Canada or America. I don't know which one. America, you can also get a green card for investing $500,000.
EB5.
EB5, yes. So I guess many of these corrupt people went through that program and invested in the U.S. and got U.S. residency. Well, some of them got citizenship, but most of them don't, because they want to have a Chinese passport, or whatever way they can travel back and forth to China easily. And they would not pay American tax. And, it's just, everybody knows that scheme. Anyway, so he built up, and finally, he's running a big financial scheme. He needs a lot of money, and he was short of money. So he went to bigger organizations to get money. And one of the organizations, the major organization who gave him money,
𝙒𝙖.
The 𝙒𝙖 is even the lower end. The higher end is Haihan, the Hainan airline, which is not airlines a very small part. They own a lot. They own a lot of real estate in New York, and it's state backing. Very well known to be extremely corrupt, but very well connect company. And Hainan's backing, 𝙒𝙖 also lots of money comes from Hainan and others. So 𝙒𝙖 is the one who supplied him money. And as I said before, 𝙒𝙖 also is the one behind Hunter Biden's money.
Right.
So here is the question. We happen to know Hunter Biden because, it's so public, and we also have his laptop and these things that he's very visible. But how many not that visible? U.S. Big guys, important guys, as they called President Biden the big guy. Well, other big guys, say the Clintons, the Obamas, we have no idea. The Trumps, I don't think so, because anyone who's investigated that much by that many organizations, well, almost anyone could be found guilty, but they could not find Trump anything. So I don't think he's the Chinese too. The Chinese also investigating all this. And anyway, so how many American and Western politicians they own? In this way, how many people, this guy, he, after all this high publicity incidents, he dared to come to the United States? Why? What kind of guarantee he think he had? Yeah, he may be singing as a bird to a U.S. authorities. I have no idea. But I guarantee you, someone like that, someone who can maneuver hundreds of millions of or trillions of dollars, and they have their guarantee. They have dirt. If he dare to come to the States, I'm quite sure he has dirt on people in the U.S., powerful people. He has dirt on powerful people in China. So in that way, with information, he may retain his freedom. Like other guys, actually, the guy I interviewed, 𝙒𝙂𝘀𝘀𝘀, exactly, almost identical situation, identical identity, except Guo actually spent 2.5 years in the Chinese jail for cheating, for racketeering. Anyway, so what we see here is that we see this picture, and let's go to the next slide. Banking crisis and economic crisis. What's the banking crisis we have seen? From this case we see, well, so far only 4 banks came out, but at least so far, the 260 something banks, according to the Chinese media, may have exactly the same problem. So this clearly is the looming banking crisis. I don't think the big banks in China, like Bank of China or commercial bank or these big banks, at this point would have problem. But the lower end banks, the small banks, all these banks, when they have this problem, and the majority, according to the report from China, the majority have this irregularity at least. And that would cover, say, half of China's population. And nothing take people off than they're losing their money. So when banking crisis happen, remember, this part of the banking crisis is completely relate to China's private economy. The private economy, you have been seeing signs of having trouble. So when the banking crisis, would this banking crisis lead to an economic crisis, we have to watch. I'm going to watch it like a hawk. And so come to the last conclusion I want to give is the end of economic miracle. Yes or no? Here is what I saw. China's economic miracle. What's the foundation of China's economic miracle? Actually, China has been having this great run for 30 years, and it boosts its economy to the number 2 biggest economy in the world. But the problem here is, first, the Chinese people, when it all began in the 1980s, especially the Chinese parents, the Chinese peasants, are so eager to work for almost nothing. And under Mao's time, the Chinese people were deprived to the extreme. The extremes, like people in Shanghai only have 1.9 square meters to live, that sort of thing. That gives the Chinese people, huge motivation to develop, to catch up. especially when the Chinese people have some taste of, developing country or the development. But after 3 decades, the Chinese economy have been losing steam. And with all this banking crisis, which affect the private economy especially, would China's economic miracle end? I think it's already ending. And the Chinese economy looks not too bad at this point. It's because of the Western economy looks very bad, especially after the pandemic, especially when President Biden, in a way, deliberately sabotaged our energy sector. So compared to China, well, China's economy still looks okay, but it's not okay. It's not okay. A lot of problems I have seen. I have some track record, I would say. After June 4th, after Tiananmen, people say, oh, the Chinese government will collapse in a few weeks. I said, no, it will not. It will not, because, what happened in Beijing would not affect the power of, of the Chinese government or the governing ability. But now, after more than 33 decades, all this affect their governing ability. And but one sad thing I would say is people sometimes naturally believe if China's economy goes south, China may start an political reform. The sad thing from this Henan demonstration is that actually people are expecting a stronger man. And who's the strong man? Well, so far I don't see a stronger one than Xi Jinping. It's a very, very sad factor. And I'm not sure how China would go out of this very sad downward trend.
Thank you so much, Sasha. There's a lot of things to mull here. The most critical thing I see is the fact that somebody was writing an app which made you feel good that your money was in your bank, except that the money was not in your bank account. It was a cleverly man in between. You had a bank account, you were here. In between was this app. It was telling you what you wanted to hear, but in reality, it was siphoning money off. This is a very dangerous situation because it completely collapses the confidence of people in banking system. And imagine if everybody shows up at the bank to say, I want to know that my balance is secure. And if they show up once every week, the banks will not be able to handle that kind of traffic. So this needs to be, the Chinese government needs to get ahead of this problem right away. And if it is 200 banks across China, that's a huge problem. I hope that sanity prevails quickly. Otherwise, you're going to have a civil war. That's how I see it. Thank you very much, Sasha. And viewers, if you like this video, please do show your appreciation by clicking on the super thanks button. And you can also like, share, and subscribe to our channel and get the word out there that all's not well with China. And also don't forget to click on the bell button for notifications. Namaskar.
Thank you. Thank you.